In this lecture, we are going to learn more details about Angular root. In the previous lecture, we learned about the root provider and how when works, and the how we put the ng view, and we will run this application and see. When application loads, you can see a blank section for the ng view, and we will see how we load the default when the application the loads. We will put .when, and the Angular root understood slash as a default, and I'll put slash that is understood as an index also, and I'll give the page to load as template URL, and I'll load header.html when the page loads, and we'll stop the application and run it and see how it's working. Yes, when template URL header.html, and I didn't see. We'll click header and about us, both are works fine, and we will see what I have missed. Yes, it works. We will rerun and see. Yes, I didn't click anything, it just load header.html as a blank page. I have put here the slash as load the blank page as header.html. It loads successfully, and you will see the other command. If the page is not available, we will put something some link, but there's no page on it. We will put no page, and we will put something else. And the other root provider, the other command is put otherwise. Actually, otherwise is working. If there's no anything to match, it will redirect to this otherwise config. I'll put if there's no any matching things, I'll redirect that to the index. I'll put I will use redirect to, and I'm going to redirect that to the index, and we'll see there's no matching for the no page. When I click on the no page, nothing happens, and we will stop it and rerun and see. When I click on the no page, nothing happens. When I click on the header, nothing happens. I think error is other. I think I have misspelled the otherwise. Yes. Now we will click on the no page, nothing happens. We will stop and rerun. Oh shit, I have misspelled otherwise. Okay, we will click on the no page and see. Yes, when I click on the no page, it redirects to the index file, the main the default file, and we will check in the index.html. I have put a link called otherwise, but in the app section there's no any matching thing to otherwise. Because of that, it calls to this otherwise, and it redirects to the header index file. I think you understood about this, the when and how the index configuration and how the otherwise is working in the Angular root. And now we learned how the Angular controller is work with the Angular routing. Just we check in the script file, we have a controller and it brings data from the backend using HTTP, and in the header HTML I have used a div inside to bring the controller, and we will see how we are going to assign controller into these the files inside of the configuration. And the first I'll start with the basic way how we assign this the controller. And the very basic way is I can give the controller here, controller, and function. I'll copy and paste these things, controller, and I want to use scope and HTTP here, and then I need to use this the HTTP get here, and I have used a controller inside of the root provider that this controller is belong to this root, and I have assigned to bring the data, and still this controller is working. I'll remove this default controller and we'll see how it's working. There's no data loads. We'll check controller, function, scope, HTTP, and this header I have used HTTP get function, and yes, it loads. We will stop this one and rerun and see is there any issues in the file. Yes, when you click the header.html, it loads the controller here. It loads the controller using this the default the basic controller I have assigned inside, and we will stop it and rerun. I have also surprised there's no data. Just check, I have put the default controller and also the header.html, but the data is not loaded. Now you can clearly understood this controller is belong to this root provider, and when the same file is here but the controller is not loaded. I think you can understood about how this root provider with the controller behavior. I have used the basic controller here, but this is not more practical way to use controller. We will see how we used this the assigned controller inside of this root provider. For the better understanding, I'll change this controller name as outside controller, and I'm going to use for this header this outside controller. I'm going to assign controller as this outside controller, and I need to give alias to this controller. I am going to give controller as. That's how we are going to give the alias, and I'm going to name as that alias out one, and we will see we have assigned this root provider to this outside controller, and I have given the alias as outcon, and I'm going to the header HTML and I'm going to assign it this outcon dot the object array and see how it's working. Yes, default header.html outside controller, and I have assigned controller as outcon. We will check is there any issue because it's not loading header.html. Oops, I do not want to use this outcon here. We will see. Stop it and run. Yes, it runs. I have used the controller in the best way to use inside of the routing. I have assigned declared and declared the controller outside of this config, and inside of the configuration I just give the controller name and assigned the controller as outcon, and you can see you can assign this controller outside and bring it inside into the root provider. And yes, the same header.html is when you click that header, it will work with this controller. If you go to the blank, the default index file, it will work with this outside controller.